We know the midterms are in the rearview mirror, but the results, well, are still in front of us. The Senate is still in Democrat control after the wins in Arizona and Nevada. Of course, thank you, Dr. Oz. Pennsylvania flipped, so now, most likely, after the Georgia runoff, it's going to end up being 51-49. Clear control there, and Kamala Harris doesn't have to break the tie. But the House is still up for grabs. Now, according to NBC, it could get down to just a one-seat majority for the Republicans. Adam Creighton is the US correspondent who joins us now via the Australian newspaper in a mystery location in DC. Lovely, sir. Lovely to see you. What about this? Now, we all know, everyone's talked about red waves and all that other stuff. Could you imagine if the Republicans or the Democrats ended up in charge of the House by one seat? The far left or the far right could destroy even divided government.
Yes, that's certainly true, Paul. It's going to be extremely difficult for the Speaker, whoever it is, and it's most likely still, I think, to be Kevin McCarthy, to control that House. It's only going to take a handful of members to disrupt his leadership, and I think that's very likely. Of course, there's all those subgroupings among the Republicans, such as the Freedom Caucus, etc., and they have their own views, their own kind of policy priorities, and they're going to push them a lot harder, and especially much harder if they have that sort of leverage.
There was an opinion poll that came out via YouGov, and I know everyone's over polls, but it was a look back at the election. It was a bit of an exit poll in there as well. Now, the truth of this election was more women voted than men. Basically, it's 55-45 in opposite directions, men voting for Republicans, women voting for Democrats, and the other way around. College education, the more likely you are to have, the more likely you are to go for the Democrats. If you're a single woman, you'll end up going for the Democrats, all the rest of it. But this poll suggested that about 40% of both Democrats who want to win in 2024 and Republicans who want to win in 2024 both believe that their parties need to do it differently. Now, that clearly means we don't want Biden, we don't want Trump. But is there any way that, you've observed American politics for a couple of years up close now. I don't know that it can change. It's an adversarial system where the media narrative is the game. So it's nice that everyone wants to change, but do you think anyone will change?
No, look, I don't think it is going to change. As you say, the structural parameters of that system are fixed, and they're not going to change. And so, if they don't change, then nothing changes. But let's face it. When you poll people, they always say we want things to change. Hope and change. Remember in 2008 with Barack Obama, and of course, nothing actually changes. But that said, I think the strategists in both parties will listen to those sorts of views, because of course they want their party to win in 2024, and so they don't want to run a candidate who's going to lose. And I think both with Donald Trump and also with Joe Biden, there are real question marks about whether those candidates would win. And so I think you're going to see a lot more speculation now over the next 2 years, now that these midterms are finished, as to who is going to be the candidates for 24. And I don't think it's going to be, Donald Trump will be mentioned, but there'll be a lot of other names mentioned as well, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah, breaking up with Trump's hard to do. The shit that you copped for being Trump literate, let alone a Trump supporter, for the past 7 years means you want to fight because the second you let go, you've given in to everyone who's ever said something nasty. But the truth is, it doesn't matter how we all feel about the culture war. They lost the midterms in 2018, they lost the presidency in 20, and they lost the midterms effectively in 2022. Whatever was... When the planets aligned, they aligned once, and that is now, 6 years ago in 2016.
Yes, look, I think that's right. I think that you can say that Trump had a successful presidency, which I think he did. I think he was a historical force of change, but I also think that his time has probably passed, and I don't think that those two ideas are inconsistent. I think that you can make both of those ideas. But as you suggest, he's such a polarising figure that his defenders often just don't want to hear a bad word about him. But I think you've seen in the past couple of weeks that there may be a couple of character flaws in Mr. Trump, and that it's kind of all about him in terms of he's been blaming people in days, other people for his selections. And I think you've got to raise the possibility now that if the Republican Party does not choose him in 24, he may well choose to run anyway, just to be a spoiler. I know we've discussed this before on this show, and you quite rightly said no, he probably won't do that because he doesn't want to lose. But I don't know.
He will now.
It's we'll just have to remain to be seen.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, he would be able to very easily to prove a point if he wanted to run as a third party,
Exactly.
as an independent. He's got the money.
Exactly.
He would have enough support in each of the 50 states to get on the ballot to make a point that without me,
Exactly.
we lose. But what's interesting...
Exactly. And he might do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly if he feels that the Republican Party in and of itself tried to screw him out of it. But there is a law of diminishing returns here where, OK, great, he can make a point for the rest of his days on the planet, which is I will never let the Republicans win as long as I am alive. And that's my... OK, great. But what does that mean? The country ends up going further to the left. And... You know, while I believe...
It cost him money too, let's face it.
Exactly. Well, while I believe that there is, and again, everyone sit down here, right? I don't want this to happen. I just think this will happen, that an AOC-type figure will end up being part of a presidential conversation, right? She will be able to do what Bernie didn't do and to be at least nominated because and I know,
I think so. Yep.
Younger people, more college educated, in 10 years' time, the electorate is way different than it is even today. And it's going to be leftier.
Yeah, look, I think that's a very good point. I mean, I look back too at the statistics when Ross Perot ran, I think in 1992, was it, or something?
Yep.
And he got 20% of the vote, which is quite extraordinary, actually. I didn't think it was that high, but it just goes to show, what share a Trump-type figure could actually get. And indeed, as you suggest, make it much easier for a far-left figure to actually win the presidency. Yeah, look, I mean, it's always troubled me, reading polls from people aged under 30 about what their preferences are. And I mean, I know that it's always been the case that, young people tend to be idealistic, but it seems particularly true now that they don't care about free markets or they don't care about liberalism or freedom in any way. So, yes, I think you're right to be worried about what that's going to throw up in the next 10, 15 years in terms of presidents.
So, your other area of expertise, of course, the economy. So we know how bad the American economy's been. We know the cost of living, inflation, all of those things. But the reality of, say, the next 2 years, if Republicans are in a position to stop spending by even being in the House by one seat, great. $4.5 trillion is enough. That's a lot of stimulus. Thanks very much. But if the American government literally did nothing, don't try to help, don't try to hurt, did nothing for the next 2 years, does the kink move through the system? Are they victims to what China wants to do? Let's imagine America just froze in place for 2 years. What happens?
Well, look, I think the money does move through the system. It does take time, but I still think the best forecasts that look at those things say inflation is still going to be 5% at the end of, basically 24 months from now, or 4%, which is still, double, triple the Federal Reserve's target. So that means you're still going to have very high interest rates. In fact, I think in 2 or 3 weeks' time, the Fed's going to lift them once again. Most estimates put the US cash rate, if you like, at about 4.5% next year, which tends to mean Australia's is going to get up there too. So I think the forward outlook, even if Republicans stymie all new spending, is still not great. We still haven't seen the impact of these super high rates yet on the jobs market in the US. The jobless rate's still 3.7%, which is extraordinarily low, very impressive. But no one seriously thinks you can have home loan rates of 7%, which they now do here, without a big impact on the housing construction sector and the auto sector and so forth. And so that's still coming down the pipeline. We just don't know when it's going to arrive.
Well, but remember, Liz Truss could not rule, must leave the building, shut the doors, take the furniture with you after 43 days because their interest rate was going to have maybe a 6 in front of it. You're talking about an America with a 7 in front of it. Australia's going to end up there as well. And I just think people need to truly understand that if they think, that London experiment, well, the people who want us to cap power prices want exactly the same thing to happen in Australia. The people in America who don't believe in a liberal and an open market, who want the federal government to get involved, you're going to do. So Trussonomics doesn't work, but a version of it might be coming your way from the left.
Oh yeah, look, I think it's certainly true that governments around the world are finally realising the cost of borrowing, and it's high, and they're going to have to make hard decisions about their expenditure. Basically, the past 15 years, no government has really cared about the size of the deficit, really, because interest rates have been so low. But now they're going to have to, and that's going to mean much higher taxes or a lower spending. And both of them are going to be politically very painful. And as you point out on the energy front, whether it's the UK or Australia, the policies are just making it so much worse, and prices are going to go up so high. I mean, how laughable is the Labor Party's promise, I think, to cut power bills by $200 and something? I mean, that's just totally absurd and obviously not going to happen. But at least if anything good, I think it comes out of the next year, it's going to be that some of these sacred policy positions will start to unravel, as I think even the person who's not paying any attention will finally see that these are hollow promises.
That's it. And your window to be able to live through them, get through and reverse, it does tighten by the day. Adam, love talking to you. Thank you for all your work. Time to go back to bed. Nice to talk to you.
Likewise, Paul.